This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
This is for Prime Minister Erdogan of Turkey. This is April 3rd, 2014, and I just learned from Wikipedia that you let those 5 murderers go home.
What happened next behind this door is still under investigation, but authorities tell us that for 2 hours the men were repeatedly tortured.
He had lots and lots of bruises. I must have been beaten up a lot.
During the torture, the men forced our husbands to recite Islamic prayers and to try to get them to renounce the Christian faith.
Police were dispatched to the scene after getting calls from a nearby office about suspicious activity. Sources are telling CBN News that as soon as the suspects heard the police coming, they decided to end the lives of the 3 Christians. What did they do to these 3 men?
They cut their throat.
When the police burst through the door, they found the 3 with their hands and legs tied to chairs. Tilmann and Necati were dead, their throats slit open. In this video obtained by CBN News, the police can be seen arresting some of the suspects inside the office. The alleged ringleader tried to escape by jumping from the 4th-floor balcony. He is still in the hospital. Ugur was on the floor, but still breathing. He was rushed to the hospital, but died several hours later. The suspects reportedly told investigators that they killed the men in defense of Islam. All 5 were carrying a letter that read, "This should serve as a lesson to the enemies of our religion. We did it for our country."
How evil you are. These are the 5 men that were caught red-handed torturing and murdering 3 beautiful young fathers and husbands. Then they murdered them for you and for Turkey for publishing the Bible. I understand that the Turkmen people come from an evil murdering culture long before Islam, but now you have this book that says it's okay. Here's a pile of dead Christians you build your nation's pride on, and then you lie because the Quran says that's okay. And it's okay to lie. May God get you. Look at these young men and their loving families.
This was a tense place.
Yes, we know this.
Yuksel experienced the tension in 2005 when protesters stood outside the same building, accusing him and other believers of using a publishing company to distribute Bibles.
The Bible tells us that when we accept Jesus into our lives, we must be willing to count the cost.
Do you consider your husband today a martyr for Christ?
Yes, I do. I think he died on the sake of Christ. And I can tell this to my kids, and they know that their father died for Jesus.
I miss him a lot, but I know that my father is up in heaven, having fun with Tilmann and Ugur.
The attack was the 3rd against Christians in Turkey. A Catholic priest and a prominent Armenian journalist were killed in the last 12 months.
Serving Jesus Christ, who died so we can go directly to God and don't have to go to priests or imams or rabbis or anybody else. And I'm going to God to tell him, get this evil man who is an Islamo-fascist gaining power because he's an alpha male. Garbage. Left over from the genetics in the hunter-gatherer stage, where the murdering dominant male was what raped the females and made the babies for the future. But we've been civilized since then. We had Abraham who said not to kill children, and now you're part of a cult that sends off your children with suicide belts on and glorify those who murder. Glorify the families that sacrifice their children to Allah. Give them millions of dollars in funds. Look on the internet. This evil. Look at the law that Moses gave, that even Pharaoh should be executed if he murders children. if he sacrifices children. It's true. Joshua was sent to exterminate a culture that murdered their children, sacrificed their children, and murdered God's children. That's true. Men, women, and children, not taking any booty, not a theocratic murdering cult that if you submitted to Joshua, you could join them and get women and booty like Muhammad. And yes, they introduced a priesthood to memorize the Torah, to make little robots to carry on this culture of safety for children not to be sacrificed. Muhammad read this, but he turned it into a theocratic pyramid scheme. I said read this. I should have said heard this. He was from a storytelling, memorizing culture rather than literate. And he heard it as a camel driver making caravans with the Jewish traders. Muhammad read this, but he turned it into a theocratic pyramid scheme of rape, pillage, and plunder. But the men could join him as long as they were willing to rape and murder in the name of Allah. For those that are unaware of history, this land called Turkey is 1,000 years after Christ, when they've murdered all the Christians or driven them out or forced them under the sword to convert to Islam. Before that, everybody spoke Armenian, even though they had been ruled by Persians, Greeks, and Romans. These were not murdering people. The Turkmen came with their murdering Islam and took over. Now nobody in the area speaks the native language anymore. My wife's grandmother, a Russian village planted in where the Turkmen had exterminated all the Armenians. It came in 1915 across the river, killing Armenians, and my wife's Russian grandmother hid one in the potato cellar underneath the kitchen floor. And they went to the grain tower in the town and found an Armenian and murdered him. But this evil cult that you're part of, and you let these murderers go, you're an accessory to the fact, and it makes you a criminal under international law. This was the land of the 7 churches.
Christians make up less than 1% of Turkey's 70 million people. The rest are Muslims. Evangelicals are even a smaller minority, numbering less than 3,500. Most of them are converts from Islam. The situation for Christians has gotten particularly worse in the last couple of years, especially after repeated negative stories about them in the national media. Take, for example, this particular publication. It says 10,000 have become Christians. Turkey gripped in fear. Mustafa Akyol, a prominent Turkish journalist, believes that such false claims only fuel the anti-Christian sentiment.
The media, unfortunately, has repeatedly depicted missionaries as the 5th column of Western imperialism. And this Western imperialism supposedly tries to carve up Turkey into pieces.
And it's not just the media. Turkey's National Security Council has listed missionaries and several evangelical groups as threats to the country.
They have set us up as a target for someone or whoever wants to make himself a hero. And, you know, the government, the media is saying that these people are poisoning the minds of individuals and children and youth. And so anybody, any youth will get up and say, hey, you know, if I kill one of these, then I'll look good.
Turkey is a secular country. Freedom of religion is guaranteed under the Constitution. But some fear the country is edging towards a religious state ruled by radical Islamists. A few days after their deaths, Susanna and Shemsa publicly forgave their husbands' killers, an act that stunned the community and drew national attention.
We forgive them because Jesus forgave us.
And he said we should love our enemies.
Susanna says her husband found comfort in the words of the prophet Isaiah. His last journal entry quoted Isaiah 61 verses 1 through 3, words that today bring comfort and hope to the family he left behind, and a resolve to stay and finish the work.
The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the broken hearts, to proclaim freedom for the captives. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor.
These horrendous murders, motivated by the AKP, your party, happened in 2007. That was 7 years ago. And you've held off bringing these people caught in the act. You've held off prosecuting them until you could change the Constitution, and then change the judges, and then accuse the secular generals and remove them for the evil that your people have done. But it's okay, you can get elected with your rhetoric, just like Hitler got elected. Look at this, what went on last year. Look at the saber of one of your people, and that was your secret policeman who gave the uniformed men their instructions.
Hey YouTube, welcome to another episode of News in 2 Minutes, bringing you the news that you need to know every day. Let's begin. The rights of the people of Turkey continue to erode as the government announced that it is now illegal to gather in groups and warned that protesters will be arrested and jailed if caught. The warning only served to fuel a nation that has been divided since a recent onslaught of police aggravation caused hundreds of thousands of Turks to gather against the government this June. A bystander recorded video that shows what appears to be either pro-government supporters or off-duty authorities chasing a group of people through the streets of Turkey with machetes and other weapons late Saturday night, hitting and abusing members of the public at random. As official authorities arrive, we see a verbal exchange with the aggressors directing the officers where to go, followed by a continued attack on bystanders as police sit by.
And Muhammad learned he could make robots by having them memorize. And so now they memorize like Surah 9. If they don't submit, cut off their head, cut off their fingers. Learn that it's okay to lie and deceive if you don't have the power. And then have the Surah of abrogation. All those nice things don't count. And then have this interfaith dialogue where these false surahs that don't mean anything anymore are used like it's a religion of peace. It's not a religion. It's a theocratic pyramid scheme murdering cult. And you're part of it. May God get you.